Hi everyone. Today in this video we are going to be looking at CFA Level 1 related common mistakes that are made by several of candidates including myself. Yes, I still managed to pull through and pass my exam, but during the course of my study and subsequently after I completed my exam, I realized that these strategies do not work for the exam, especially the level 1. So let's get into the video and know what these mistakes are. The very first red flag that you would have is you collecting too much of materials to study. Please spend time and decide for yourself whether the CFA curriculum itself that is offered when you register for the exam is enough for you to study, or do you need any other support materials. And if you need any other support materials, decide who should be the service provider and what kind of the support material is required. Common mistake that a lot of candidates make is that they collect a lot of materials from several service providers. End of the day, they have all the notes they require, but they overwhelm themselves trying to go through all these materials. Don't do that. Select the best service provider that you want to opt for, or you could rather stick to the CFA material itself and begin your study. The next common mistake that we commonly see is that too much focus is on note taking. Now, usually when you sit for CFA Level 1, it is after your degree program or undergraduate program. While you study for that, you would sit for your CFA Level 1. And at that stage in life, you're more used to a passive way of learning, where you read the note, read the material, and take down notes. Write it on a notebook, the summarized version, so that you can go back and refer again to study. Now, that is a wrong strategy for CFA Level 1. Why? You're just wasting your time. You're not using this time to understand and study the material. You're just reading it and summarizing it as an exercise only. Don't waste time on note taking. Rather than that, read the material in the very first time itself attentively and try to understand the concept of it. Spend more time on that rather than note taking. Why I'm saying this is even I started off with that strategy. But later you realize when you get closer to the exam, since the curriculum is so vast, it's practically impossible for you to take notes of every topic. And even though you took notes, you're unable to refer those notes due to the lack of time. Third common mistake that a lot of candidates make is not focusing on the high weightage topics. Now, CFA is designed in such a way that you have 10 topics, and these 10 topics are given a range of weightages. Now, before you start your study plan, what is recommended is to go through these high weightage topics and to start from that. What most students fail to do is that they understand that there are weightages. They are aware of these weightages as well. But their opinion or their thinking is that let me start off with the topic that I'm comfortable with. Something that is easier, something that I'm specialized on. So if I start in that area, I should be able to quickly finish it off. And some even think, let me start off with the low weightage area so that I can quickly finish it and move on to the bigger topics so that I will remember the bigger topics much closer to the exam. That strategy does not work for CFA. Please at the inception itself, note down the high weightage topics and start with these high weightage topics, because majority of the questions at your exam will come from these high weightage areas. So if you keep it for last, and if you run out of time, and if you don't have time to understand it and practice that area well, you'll be in great danger. Bordering on the same mistake is that a lot of candidates ignore the low weightage topics entirely. Another common strategy that is not recommended but widely used by most candidates is that they go through these weightages and they decide, okay, there are some high weightage topics, let me only spend my time on them. Let me ignore the low weightage areas. One thing, let's not spend more time on it. Oh, I have already know these areas. With that prior knowledge, I can tackle them. With that belief, they ignore the low weightage areas. Again, CFA is a totally different ball game. Here, each topic is assessed separately. Even though it carries a low weightage, you will have to pass that topic as well on a standalone basis. So here at least the bare minimum knowledge of the topic is required. So you following a strategy of only focusing of the high weightage and ignoring the low weightage areas will not work. Lack of attention on formulas. Now, CFA Level 1 carries a lot of materials, especially in terms of formulas. So, while you study, maybe taking notes of the formulas, taking what kind of variables are factored into the formulas will be helpful. Don't just go past the formula without practicing the formula and without understanding the formula. Why? Because it is a MCQ based question, the CFA level 1, and it's usually an application process. It's not as in depth as the other two levels. So here it's the knowledge that is being tested, which means your remembrance and your understanding of the formulas is very, very important. So spend adequate time on taking note of the formulas and understanding what are the variables considered in these formulas, for what situations it can be used, what pieces of information is mandatory for the formula to work. The next common mistake is that the candidates fail to cover the minimum 300 hours. Now, if you go through a lot of YouTube videos, which gives you recommendations on strategies, yes, there are some videos which says you don't need the 300, you can do a crash study and still get through. Yes, it can be possible for certain candidates. Candidates who have a good background in finance, maybe for them, this 300 hours of a minimum requirement is not mandatory. And people or candidates who have adequate time or can take off time during their exam, yes, even for them, they could get a slide away from this requirement of 300 hours. But if you do not have prior knowledge in the finance area, now please be mindful, finance and accounting are totally different topics. Just because you are mastered in accounting, you can't consider yourself as mastered in finance. So even if you're specialized in accounting, you would bare minimum need this 300-hour time requirement to spend for CFA. So if you don't have prior knowledge in finance area, you will need this 300 hours. If you do a crash study for level 1, and now when you're crash studying for level 1, you're not studying for knowledge, you're just starting to get through. Even though that strategy might work for level 1, it might not work for level 2. Remember, level 2 is an expansion of level 1. So the broad forward knowledge is important. So to make sure that you have the broad forward knowledge, yes, you would have to at least spend your 300 hours to cover this syllabus. Lack of practice in ethics topic. Now, again, when we move back to the weightages, you can of course see that ethics carry a larger weightage in level 1. So that should tell you nearly 15 to 20% of your questions at the exam is going to come from this topic area. What most students make a mistake in is that they go through the note of ethics and they realize, okay, it's fairly straightforward material. I know that I shouldn't be doing all this. So why spend time practicing it? It's an easy area. I can tackle any question on it. Now, when you read through the note, you will get a judgment like that. But when you actually practice the questions, you realize that these questions are practical scenarios. Scenarios that you would see in the day-to-day work life. Scenarios that will make it difficult for you to come to a conclusion, for you to decide saying this is black and white. Questions which test the gray areas. So for you to master the ethics topic, merely studying the note is not sufficient. You do have to spend a lot of time practicing in these ethics questions as well. The final but the most common error that a lot of candidates make is lack of time for mocks. They spend too much of their time in note taking, in studying, but they forget that practicing for the exam is important. You need to do at least bare minimum 3 mocks so that you know where you stand. And it cannot be done just one time. The first attempt is not sufficient because the first attempt at your mocks will just tell you where you stand. If you are good in your knowledge, if you have done the work for it, of course you will be able to get a score of above 80. Now remember, if you score a good mark of above 80 to 85 at mocks, you can take a breather saying that you're in the right track. But if you're already in the area of, let's say, 60 to 80 in terms of the mock score, it is at a dangerous point because at the exam, questions can get tougher. So please, when you pre-plan your study strategy, spend adequate time for mocks as well. I would say at least 3 weeks entirely dedicated for mocks is recommended. Why? You do the mocks and then you have to spend time on getting the learning out of the mock exam as well. So a balanced approach is required. Don't merely follow your same strategy that you used for your degree program, your undergraduate program or your diploma here at CFA as well. Merely just studying and replicating it at the exam will not help you. Practicing for mocks is a vital strategy for you to get your pass mark at your level 1. So I hope this video was helpful to you. These are the main mistakes that I made, but still I was able to pivot. But as a result of these mistakes, now I am going to sit for CFA level 2 and I am spending much more time than required to cover and recap my knowledge in CFA level 1. So it is something that I don't want y'all to go through. So with that intention, I made this video. I hope it was helpful to all of you. I'll meet you all in another video. I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you for listening and subscribe and support us for more videos.